everybody. Welcome to Performance Anxiety. This is your host, Mark. And before we get into too much, I just wanted to thank AKG for sending us their Podcasters Essentials kit. It comes with a fantastic set of headphones and a Lyra mic. So if you've thought about doing your own podcast, this is the best, most economical way to get into it. And speaking of getting into it, Steve Almaas was on the cutting edge of punk music in the 1970s with the band Suicide Commandos. And in the 80s, he took a turn towards pop music with the album and band Beat Rodeo. He began releasing true solo albums a short time later. He's got a new solo album coming out called Everywhere You've Been, and it's a lot of fun. It includes 2 tracks that came to Steve in his sleep. You can check Steve out on Facebook and check out the record on Lonesome Whippoorwill. Check us out on social media at Performance ANX. You can get us a cup of coffee at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety. Merch with our Mark Dancy designed logo is at performanceanx.threadless.com. And check out all the other great shows on the Pantheon Podcast Network like Highway Hi-Fi, Long May You Young, Feels Like Weezer, and almost 70 other shows. Let's dive right into Steve Almaas on Performance Anxiety.
Hello, Groovers. Steve Almaas here. We're having some performance anxiety. I'm here. I'm feeling... I'm not feeling that anxious. But, I'm from the past. Suicide Commandos, Beat Rodeo. I'm here talking about my new album, Everywhere You've Been. I'm glad you're listening, and I hope you'll check out the album. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you for joining me and talking about the new album and the history of your music, because part of this show is to find out how you got to where you are now. So I kind of like to start at the beginning where most things start and find out how you got into music in the first place. Was there a lot of music in the household growing up? What was the first band or song that you remember really getting into?
Well, it's funny. We had paused to think about this 2 days ago because I'm of that generation that on February 9th of 1964, the Beatles came on Ed Sullivan, and the world was one way the day before that, and the world was another way the day after.
Yep.
And I was of that generation where there's a few times in your life where the world completely changes from one way to another. And luckily that was a positive one.
Yeah.
And they got me hook, line, and sinker. And from there on out, that was my number one interest, was like music and groups and all of that.
Oh, cool.
So that's where, I was a little kid. And it took me a few years to, get a guitar and stuff, but I started in my early teens. And
okay. So was guitar the first love, or were there any other instruments in the mix?
Guitar was first love, but I did also play piano and violin, but, they didn't lend themselves to the kind of music I was interested in as well as the guitar did.
Right. You didn't want to be the next Jerry Lee Lewis.
Well, now I wouldn't mind, but
how old were you when you started really wanting to play with other people and getting bands together?
I got in band. I started playing guitar when I was around 12, and then had friends up in junior high and high school. I had a sort of basement band with some other people in the neighborhood where I went to school in the western suburbs of Minneapolis.
Okay.
And, we just played whatever cover music we were interested in at the time and stuff. And, but it wasn't really till after high school that, things came together in a way where I could it wasn't until after high school where I really met people I could learn something from.
Okay. And so basically at this point, you're just playing covers. You're not really writing your own music yet? Or are you?
No, in junior high and high school, not writing my own music. No.
Okay. At what point did you start writing your own music? How old were you?
Well, I got out of high school. I went to university for a year, and then I wasn't feeling like that was for me. And I had already made friends with these guys, Chris Osgood and Dave All, and they invited me to be in a band with them. They were living in this farmhouse out in the western suburbs, not too far from where my parents' house was.
Okay.
And I said yes. And I mean, they were like 2 years older than me, which at that age was a lot.
Yeah.
And they were really smart people that knew a lot about a lot of things. And Chris, the guitar player, was already writing songs. And as we, started playing, I mean, this was the Suicide Commandos.
Right.
Initially, we had to learn 4 sets of material to go play in bars in Minneapolis, that was what was open to you. So that's what you had to do.
Wow.
And, but Chris was writing songs. And that made me want to write songs. And, I kind of followed his template.
Suicide Commandos. Suicide Commandos. You guys were really on the cutting edge at that point.
Well, somebody made a lovely comment about the band that, we were punk rock when you could own all the punk rock records.
Right.
because there were so few of them.
Wow. I didn't think of it
there was we kind of just fell into that movement because we happened to be doing what we were doing at the same time. Perubu in Cleveland and the bands in New York were doing what they were doing. And, we started picking up on that, and it allowed us to, you'd look in Rock Scene magazine and see all the stuff going on in New York. We just called up CBGBs and said, can we come and play? They couldn't believe, they couldn't believe somebody from uptown would want to come down and play in that bar, much less from Minnesota. And we drove out there and played there.
Wow.
And picking up on what was going on. These little pockets that really inspired us to write our own music. And, we just wanted to be a part of it.
So what were you listening to at that time? What was really inspiring you to go in that direction?
When the Suicide Commandos first got together, Dave, the drummer, he had just come back from this trip to England, and he brought back like Roxy Music albums and John Cale's solo albums and the pub rock bands like Dr. Feelgood and Ducks Deluxe. And that was kind of playing in with we definitely had the Lenny K Nuggets record and of all the 60s garage band stuff, and we loved that music. And so in our bar band sets, we were putting all these songs in there, playing Roxy Music and 60s garage band covers.
Oh, wow.
We immediately, other musicians started hearing us and digging that we were doing this, and it kind of jump started a little bit of a scene there in Minneapolis. And then, we quickly were slipping in as much of our own material as we could.
How did you guys come up with the name Suicide Commandos?
I believe it was actually the title of a Aldo Ray movie that Chris or Dave knew. It was from a movie,
That's cool. Now I've got to look that up because I had no idea. So, and in the band, all 3 of you sang too, right?
We all sang, yep.
That, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that seems a bit unusual for most bands. Yeah,
it was. Well, there was only 3 of us. So we all needed to make as much noise as possible, which involved singing,
So early on, did the band get a good reception when you were playing locally?
We did. When we managed to get some gigs in Minneapolis, I already said it, but some of the other bands around town heard us play, and these people were really generous and made friends with us, you know, and that really kind of got us going and got us in with the other players in Minneapolis.
How soon after the band's formation were you actually prepared to record the studio album that you guys put out?
Well, I mean, we got together in fall of 1975. In May of 1976, we played at CBGB's. In August of 1976, we made our first single. Mm-hmm. You know, it was my song on that one. Was maybe the first song I ever wrote. Definitely one of the first songs I ever wrote. Wow. I mean, so that's kind of good, right? The first song you ever write, it gets to be on a record, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Don't try and tell me how much fun it is, 'cause I've been there. It was so. I was up all night, scared out of my brain, 'cause it was my turn. Go. What's the really deranged? I never felt like this before. I had the shakes in my knees and I was going insane. You had me running.
And then we made another 45. There was like a year and a half growth period there where we ended up making friends with Per Ubu out in Cleveland.
That's awesome.
And they were the ones that hooked us up with Mercury record people and got us, you know, we got that record deal.
Yeah.
Through Per Ubu told the record people about us. So, you know, we recorded that album in the, fall, winter of 77. It came out in early 78.
Okay.
So, yeah, everything was happening. That band, the whole thing was 3 years.
Yeah, I was looking at that. That's so fast. I mean,
it was fast, but at that age, it's not as fast.
That's true.
Like,
that's so
in
true.
your late teens, early 20s, a year is a lot more of a chunk of time. So,
yeah.
I mean, we packed a lot into those years.
Oh yeah, you also packed a lot into that album. I mean, there are a ton of songs on the studio album and the live album.
Let me laugh, I think you're smart, and now and then you get a thought. What you do, I never know, but I don't care now if you don't. Some people think you know a lot, but I just think you're semi-smart. I just think you're semi-smart. You never do not want to say I.
That's just a huge, you know, for 2 albums, that's quite a big catalog of stuff, of music.
There was a lot. Yeah, we managed to make a lot of music there.
And there's some really cool stuff. I mean, I was going over it again today. I listened to it at work to kind of refamiliarize myself with it. And, you know, songs like Semi-Smart, that riff is awesome. Call of the Wild it's got this like Black Sabbath-y riff to it.
You're a carbon gentle rude boy walking down the sidewalks. Your business not your gig. If you get your money, then everything is alright. And if you don't, you gotta mess it up. You don't smart, we're gonna go on trial. Gonna make it like you hear the call of the wild.
It is so cool. And the guitar solo on I Need a Torch, it's amazing.
Because a lot of, we probably had these influences like Humble Pie and Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult and stuff too.
Oh, yeah.
Was, other music we would have sort of liked in some way, even if we just thought it was funny, right? But it crept in there.
Yeah. And I'm kind of at a loss for words for it because it sounds a lot more varied than some of the other punk music that I've heard at the times. Like, I don't hear...
Later, like original punk music was not this codified sound. It was a much broader palette. And, that's kind of my punk rock. Like the band X, when they came out in 1979, a band I really grew to love in their later music, like when Under the Big Black Sun and they made some music I really, really liked. Yeah. But when I heard their first album in 1979, I thought it sounded kind of dated.
Oh, really?
To me, that kind of fast punk sound sounded like a little 1976 to me in
already,
1979.
Huh? Yeah.
And so, all that means is just where my head was at. Not that there was anything wrong with it or anything, but, things were moving forward quickly then.
Yeah. And so after not even quite 4 years, the Suicide Commandos broke up. What happened? How did that all end?
Well, in the big picture, we probably just had sort of done everything that we were going to do. I really wanted to move to New York.
Okay.
The other guys in the band did not. Another band came along, the Suburbs, who kind of dethroned us as the most popular band in Minneapolis. Even though like two of those guys were like my best friends since like I was a little kid, I wasn't thrilled about that either. And for me, it was just this idea of, everything's just got to keep moving forward. You got something new, something different, something. Yeah. And as soon as that didn't seem, we just sort of got this feeling we had done what we could do.
Okay.
And it was time to move on.
And so you did take that opportunity to move to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of ended up in part of the no wave scene, the short-lived, fast-paced no wave scene.
There was definitely this band, the Crackers that I had, we picked up on a little bit of that post-punk feel for sure.
Were you playing in that scene with bands, like A-Band and Swans and Theoretical Girls?
Well, it's funny. Swans was a little later, but A-Band, Paul McMahon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I had Wharton Tears on the show like a year ago.
We played, we opened for the Slits.
Oh,
we played with the Ray Beats. We played, we were playing in those same clubs as Del Byzantine's, Jim Jarmusch's band.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And Tier 3, Maxwell's in Hoboken.
Oh, yeah.
Haraz. So, yes, the being in the Suicide Commandos was a great calling card for coming to New York.
Yeah.
And people were welcoming for us to play.
You recorded a solo piece. Beat Rodeo was a solo project first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There was, I spent a little spell kind of filling in on rhythm guitar with this band, the Bongos.
Yeah.
And then it just came clear that, I wanted to write and sing and stuff, and the Bongos was not going to be the forum to do that. And Richard, the leader of the Bongos, helped me put together this solo project.
Can't let them see what you've done to me. Got a heart that never meant. 'Cause I remember when we were more just friends. We're just friends. Like to say that you adored me. I need a love that won't pretend.
Yeah, that record is Richard Barone, myself, and Mitch Easter.
Right, yes.
And after we did that, I formed a band named after the title of the record.
That's pretty. I haven't heard it that way very often, so that's pretty neat. Now, and you did that before you ended up moving to North Carolina, right?
I never moved to North Carolina. Although I had a very close relationship with Mitch Easter, who did move from New York back to North Carolina.
Okay. So
and worked with Mitch and Don Dixon and that North Carolina scene. I did a lot of recording in North Carolina. Yes.
Okay. So you spent a lot of time there, but you didn't actually live there.
No.
Okay. All right. So how did the sound go from punk to no waves to the poppier sound of Beat Rodeo?
Well, I think there was a point where you started hanging around with Richard Barone. There was a great love of the Beatles and everything around that. And there was kind of this thing of started looking backwards from there, and the kind of formative sound of the Beatles was like rockabilly and rhythm and blues and country. And it was kind of a, organic thing where you just started looking back that, where did the music you love come from? And it came from those sources, old rock and roll, country, and rhythm and blues. And that kind of inspired the next step to take the inspiration from those older forms of music.
Okay. And how did the band Beat Rodeo come together? How did you find all these guys? Was it all Richard Barone?
It was sort of good luck. I met the guitar player because I knew his girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
And we met, and he had this jazz and country background, which was really interesting. And then he knew other players that he brought in. And that original Beat Rodeo, something really great. I learned a lot. That was meeting another set of people that I could learn a lot from, those players. And, which really inspired the songwriting to go where it could go and stuff, was from having these guys that could play the way those guys could play.
So, Hannah, how long did Beat Rodeo last? That was...
the original, the band that was just playing original music probably in one form or another lasted about 4 years.
Okay. And then you ended up deciding to go truly solo again. Instead of doing a solo project and forming a band around it, you just went completely solo.
Just sort of by default, yeah.
Ah, okay. The sound's getting a little countryer tinged, folkier tinged as the bands progress. And that to me is really fascinating with the punk background that you kind of started with, the first real band that you had. So I'm really interested in that progression. What was influencing you that way?
The common thread was, I remember Paul McCartney saying this once, it's really hard to write a good, simple rock and roll song because, like, in one way, it's so easy, but, then another way, everything's been done a million times.
Yeah.
And, punk rock showed a lot of us that you could write a really good song without being in the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Yeah. And that kind of idea, I think, is probably, there's a certain straightforwardness or maybe simplicity to all the music that I've done, whether it's mellowed or got more folky or more country or this or that, but there's kind of a just straight ahead thing about it, that there's not a lot of falderah.
Yeah. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. I was listening to the albums you did with Allie Smith. Those were
very, thank you. They were very pleasant to make. Allie was my girlfriend at the time, and those records were kind of these Valentines to her, to give her a forum to sing and perform, and I really enjoyed them. Yes,
I enjoyed listening to them, and because one of my favorite songs ever is "Come Softly to Me," and you guys did such a sweet version of that. I thought it was so good.
Dum 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 do I be dooby doo dum 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 do I be dooby doo dum 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 do ah be dooby doo dum dum. Dum do ah be dooby doo. Come softly. 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 Dum do ah be dooby doo. Come softly.
The album isn't just like 50s covers and all. Neither of them are. And there's some country tunes and there's some contemporary music like Shrunken Head. It's just a really interesting mix.
It came together in a very organic and agreeable way. The drummer was somebody that Allie had played with, and the bass player was an old compadre of mine, and we had a really nice time making that. And I'm glad you picked up on the Jack Logan too, right? I really liked that song when I heard it, so it was really fun to cover it.
I listened to it several times today, just at work, because it's just such it's a great version of it. It's very sweet and it's very nice. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about this because in the late 90s, Suicide Commandos kind of got back together for a gig, and then I think it was like 7 or 8 years after that, you guys played in front of 10,000 people. Then suddenly, your song "Complicated Fun" gets picked up for a Target commercial.
Show me where the plug is, and I'll recharge on the run. We got to get a handle on some complicated fun, so we rock.
How did all that stuff come about? That's just insane.
Just some ad man in Minnesota that liked the band, right?
Man, that's all it was.
Yeah. And Suicide Commandos made a new record 4 years ago.
I was just about to ask you about that because you guys did kind of reform again in 2007 that you actually reformed, and then a new album in 2016.
We never reformed. We would get together once or twice a year and maybe play a show or something.
Okay.
But we had this feeling like 2015 or something. We knew the Ramones a little bit, and like all the original Ramones died, and we were, kind of commiserating about that. And then I just like off the top of my head, I said, we should really we're all still here. We should really make another record while we're all still here. And so we kind of put our heads together and did.
I love that album. That is such a cool album. Here's what I'm trying to figure out, because I was listening to it at work and I couldn't see the track listings. So I'm pulling it up right now and I'm trying to remember what the heck song it was where sounds like there's a dog barking in the background.
Oh, that's my Kendall.
Books indefinitely. If you came around eventually, I would play up all my thrills for you. If you tried again like you wanted to.
That's my favorite.
That was my favorite track.
I'm gonna go. Here she is right now, the star of the record.
Oh, so sweet.
And the great thing about it was she was on there because when I was making the demo to send to Chris and Dave, I was like just doing it in the living room here.
Yeah.
And she just happened to bark in time twice on the demo. So I pulled the bark off the demo and put it on the real cut.
That's awesome. That made me laugh. So I was actually had the earbuds on while I'm working, and I hear it. And I started laughing out loud. People starting to stare at me. So, but that record is so good. It doesn't sound like just a punk band. I mean, again, you got a lot of varied influences coming in, and it doesn't sound like a Ramones album would sound like dated. Like you were saying, some of it would sound dated immediately, even if it's a song they had just written. But this doesn't. This sounds contemporary.
We made the music we would make now, just with whatever had happened in all these years, and and it sounds like that. It's
really cool. And if people, the listeners haven't checked it out yet, you definitely need to check it out. So now is this your 6th solo album coming out? I
guess it is my 6th if you don't count the records with Allie.
Right, yeah.
The records with Allie, it would be the 8th. 6th or 8th,
whatever. Somewhere in there. When did you start writing for this? Because there's like a 9-year gap between albums.
Yeah, the writing goes much slower now. I make my living as a elementary school teacher.
Okay.
And so, I'm not sitting around in my bathrobe during the day drinking coffee and waiting for the songs to come like I would like to be.
Right. Yeah.
So, I write in the summer and I write when I have time off or this and that. And it took me, 6 years or something to have enough songs that I like to do another one. Not to mention I had, put 6 songs into the Suicide Commandos record in between there too. So that took some of my songwriting. And but yes, it's a slower, probably more careful process now than it was, when I was younger and they were just popping out all the time.
Before we get too deep into it, when did you start teaching? How did you get into education?
I had a daughter. My daughter was born in the early 90s, and a couple years after that, I had a friend who was a clothing designer that had the same thing. She had some children and needed to get a more steady income, and she had gone into teaching, and I kind of followed her path there.
That's
so paid for the braces. And
I can empathize with that. I did the same thing. I was a photographer for a decade, and then kids came along, and I had to get some steady income too. So
I never stopped, but I had to. Had to get her done.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so back to the new album, Everywhere You've Been. Is there something behind that title?
Well, the song, it's the title of the opening song, and it's sort of a song to somebody that's more my age that might not be feeling so great about their life and where they're at. And it's sort of a way of me saying, you're not just the hard time you're going through right now. You are the summation of your whole life of all these really good things. And in a way you could say that the music on this record is, made from everything I've learned along the way. And so it kind of fits with that. It's got a little bit of, it's just got a little bit of everything that I do in there.
So that makes perfect sense for the title then.
Long dark hair, lily white hands, blue-eyed original sin. You're everything you ever were. Everywhere you've been, you're everywhere you've been.
I
read that some lyrics came to you in a dream.
2 songs on this one weird ass plane trip.
I'm assuming that's not how you normally write your lyrics.
It is never how I write my song. I was going out to Minneapolis to play a gig with the Suicide Commandos.
Okay.
And I got on the plane and had the weird, which never happens anymore. I had 3 seats to myself.
Oh, wow.
And I immediately laid down after the plane took off and fell asleep. And I woke up and the lyrics to this song, Cigarettes, Coffee, and You, I just woke up thinking like, cigarettes, coffee, and you. And
wow.
It just popped out, and I had my iPad, and I just wrote out the full set of lyrics.
Oh, wow.
And I go, God, that was weird. And I laid down, and I kind of fell asleep again.
Okay.
And I woke up, and there was another one.
You need to sleep more often.
I cannot make you love me. I was like blah, 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 just like another just full set of lyrics. That was the magical plane trip.
Leave the dog where it lays. I can cross every room. Light a candle for life. You may never see one thing that I cannot do. Cannot make you love me.
So I got those two full sets of lyrics, and took them home and made songs out of them.
And that one's one of my favorites on the album. It's a really fantastic composition. I love that song.
Thank you.
There are several different styles on this album, and one of the songs that I absolutely love, that I think is just a really cool track, is The Way I Treated You, because it kind of mixes two of my favorite, I guess, bands from growing up. It sounds like Marty Robbins meets Simon and Garfunkel.
Well, I'm not the person who usually dwells on my life's past mistakes. I've made a few, and I've always saw myself as one who gives more than he takes. What can you do? But now looking back and thinking about the times I may have made a mess or two.
Well, my thought, I definitely dig where you're getting the Marty Robbins vibe, but what I was thinking of, I was trying to write kind of like a Roger Miller style song where, Roger Miller would have these songs where the words kind of tumble over each other.
Yes.
And it was sort of an exercise to try to do that.
Okay.
I wanted to have this thing where the lyrics were just kind of spilling out in this way that I think of as Roger Miller doing. But then, when I wrote the song and then cut it, and the guy that plays guitar on that, John Graboff, he's moved out to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So he was not, he was overdubbing the guitars,
Oh, wow.
And, I mean, we've played together so much that I can just give him all I said to him was, I'm just like thinking in this kind of Roger Miller vibe with a nylon string guitar. Roger Miller always had his guitar player was a nylon string guitar guy.
Right.
But anyway, that's what John came back with.
That's cool.
Yeah, there is definitely a little Marty Robbins in it too.
Yeah, and I grew up just completely, I just soaked him up. I loved him growing up. So that was a really cool trip. So all right, so John Graboff, now he's played with Cyndi Lauper, Willie Nelson, Ryan Adams, Norah Jones. You've also have, the funny thing is I see some of these people and sometimes I have no idea how to pronounce their names. So is it Garnier from Bob Dylan's band?
Yeah, okay. Tony Garnier. That's a great, how he happened to get involved in the sessions is the drummer on the record, TJ Mayani, is my daughter's fiance.
Oh, cool.
He's a pro drummer. He plays with, now I'm forgetting his name. Hopefully I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway, Tony plays in TJ's jazz trio.
Okay.
So
wow.
My future son-in-law brought Tony into the project.
That's great.
That was a great. And actually, I had met Tony. Tony's from Minneapolis as well, and we had met years ago and kind of talked about that. But
cool.
So we hadn't met before, but TJ brought him into the project. Yeah. And
you've also had Kenny Vaughan, who plays with Marty Stewart's band.
Yeah, best country band in America right now. If you ask me.
And then you've got some beautiful female vocals on there. Who are the singers? Because I know that I am not going to be able to pronounce the names correctly, at least one of the names correctly. So who are the female harmonizers that you've got on the album?
Well, there's Daria Grace.
That one I can figure out.
She's she leads a great band called Daria Grace and the Pre-War Ponies, and they play like 20s and 30s pop music that they learn from sheet music. You know, not the typical songs that anybody would. They really delve in and play this great stuff. Great singer and bass player. Although she doesn't play bass on my record, but she's a great bass player.
Okay.
And then and Vibeke Saugestad, who she's a Norwegian pop star.
I read that. I got to look up her music.
You know what the thing to look up? You wouldn't just get it from her name, but she made this record with a Norwegian producer called Tinkerbell.
Okay.
Like Tinkerbell, but Tinkerbell. And there's this song called Summer Days. I'm just so in love with that song.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I met Vibeke through Daria, and they came in and just, you know, sang most of the harmonies on the record.
Beautiful.
Such good singers. That was a joy doing those sessions with them, you know, the kind of singers where, you know.
Like on the three women, that's beautiful.
She's never gonna love you. No, don't say that it's true. That girl is never gonna love you. But what can I do? Took this wounded bird in hand till he was feeling well. But in the heaven where he found his strength, she found.
I love the vocals on that. I know you did a lot of this kind of well, I shouldn't say I know. I wanted to ask if you did a lot of this remotely.
Well, there's definitely a remote aspect to it, but the meat and potatoes of the record, the bass and drums and the rhythm guitars and the background vocals with the girls and that was all done in Greenpoint, Brooklyn at Eric Amble's Cowboy Technical Services. I did most of my lead vocals at my home studio just because I like to sing alone.
Yeah.
Most of them, not all of them. Some of them I did in Brooklyn too.
Okay.
And then, you know, Kenny Vaughn played. We recorded at my friend's studio in Woodstock when Marty Stewart was opening for Steve Miller in Kingston.
Oh, wow.
Marty gave Kenny the afternoon off so he could come and record with me.
That's
which
awesome.
was lovely of him. And and John Graboff, the pedal steel and a lot of the guitar, he did that out in Santa Fe.
Okay.
So, but you know, the basic feel stuff was all done together in Brooklyn.
Well, the reason I ask is because there is and I'm a guitar nut, so I can't play very well, but I love the guitar. The tone on the guitar, is it an organ in Bread in the Bone? It's all beautiful. Tonally, are you guys playing a lot of vintage instruments? Because it really sounds like.
Yeah, those are all people. Bread in the Bone is Mitch Easter playing the guitars on that. And all the instruments are beautiful old instruments with good amps. All of it, yes. Every guy that plays guitar on there has got really nice, you know, Gibson and Fender guitars with beautiful old amps.
It sounds like it, because you can tell a difference between something that's definitely old in quality over something that's emulating something that's old in quality. And this has that. No, quality. Not emulate. Nothing emulated.
There's
a lot of, it sounds like there's a lot of influence from music of the 50s and 60s in this album. You know, this looks like 1955, Down by the Lake, Cigarettes, Coffee, or You, Three Women. Was that an inspiration?
That's my time.
Yeah.
That's my time of music that I loved, you know. And so it just comes out in my music. What
I love is the dichotomy between that and then the heavier stuff that you're still writing with Suicide Commandos. It's fascinating to me. I love that stuff. Now, there's also a hidden track Unless you don't want me to add to mention the hidden track and let people find it.
No. We get to talk about the hidden track. We don't want it to be too hidden.
That's a really cool track. Can you tell me the actual name of it?
Yeah, it's Sarah Lou.
Okay.
It's for that came about. Was recorded later than everything. Came out because of the pandemic. My sweetheart is a nurse practitioner.
Oh,
and
God bless her.
And when the pandemic started, I couldn't see her for 12 weeks.
Wow.
She was, on the front line and just didn't feel good about. Didn't want to, expose anybody to anything. And I was really missing her. And so I wanted to make something beautiful for her. So I went out in my little home studio and I played guitar and I sang and I played bass to a, rhythm machine. And I sent it down to Mitch Easter and he played drums and guitar and little keyboards.
Oh, cool.
And then mixed it. So that hidden track is me and Mitch, and it was just a Valentine to my girlfriend Sarah. Yeah,
that is wonderful. It's a beautiful track. I'm glad it made it on the album.
That I knew you when, oh Sarah Lou, didn't know I was waiting for Sarah. I know I want more.
So yeah, I just want to. I mean, in a way, I don't know if it fits with the other songs, but that's why I stuck it on as a secret song.
Well, I like that. With so many digital things being released digitally and streaming, you don't get hidden tracks, and that's what I used to love about. That happened so often in the 90s. People would hide tracks at the end, and then they started to hide them in the beginning, where you'd have to hit track 1 and then rewind. I never heard of that. Oh God, I think Blind Melon did it on one, and I think Nine Inch Nails did it on an album. It's I don't know. People trying too hard to be different. I don't know. That one was a little rough because not every CD player would rewind past before track 1. That was a pain in the butt. But well, where can people find the album? How can they pick it up? It comes out in the beginning of March, right?
Yeah, I mean, the usual outlets like your iTunes and I'm sure Amazon will have I will say the vinyl is a excellent pressing. I was so pleased with the way, when I got the test pressings and then got a copy of the vinyl version of the record. If you're a vinyl person, I can wholeheartedly recommend going for that.
Oh,
but I mean, those are the places I know off the top of my head. The distribution is through this company called Border Music that was bought by an American company. I'm going to look here and tell you what it is.
Sure. Yeah. And while you're looking that up, is there a social media presence that people can check out to follow what you're doing?
I'm a Facebook guy. Yeah.
Okay.
That's really, the North Carolina independent distributor Red Eye is going to be, Red Eye will be distributing the record in the States.
Oh, great. So check it out on streaming platforms, Amazon, and I'm assuming Red Eye, you might be able to buy it.
Red Eye will know where to get it. But yeah, iTunes and Amazon will have it. Those are probably the easiest ones to find.
All right. Well, I've kept you for quite a while, but it's been a blast talking to you.
Thank you for your interest. You obviously did your homework, and I appreciate it.
What's it gonna be? No more cigarettes, coffee, or you? Now when it comes to cigarettes, I gotta ask you why. They give you cancer, steal your breath, and they'll bleed your wallet dry. They look cool in the 60s, well that was long ago. Well alright hun, I've chosen one, those cigarettes got to go. Cigarettes, coffee, or you? I've gotta quit just two. So brother, what's it gonna be? No more coffee or you?
Now, coffee boy, there's a horse of the rarest color found. The darkest roast sends me the most when the beans are